In this presentation, I will critically examine my past, present and future photographic work. My first experience with photography was during my art foundation year, where we learned how to process and develop black and white film. This complemented some of the other disciplines that I had an interest in, particularly graphic design. I went on to study a degree in graphic design and photography. It was here where I produced a large body of work in both areas, a lot of it being highly experimental. Stefan Sagmeister and Jonathan Barnbrook were big influences on me. Sagmeister's book, Made You Look, I found very thought-provoking as it was designed in a way that I'd never seen before. Jonathan Barnbrook started out as a typographer, but recently he designed David Bowie's album cover for Black Star. The black on black design is really subtle, but still has a great impact. For my final major project, I was influenced to take a trip to Tokyo, Japan, after watching the 2003 film Lost in Translation. Written and directed by Sofia Coppola, the film explores themes of alienation and disconnection against a backdrop of cultural displacement in Japan. The opening sequence was very dreamlike, with great use of depth of field to enhance the dreamlike state the character is in. This imagery of Tokyo was so alluring to me, the neon signs, the Japanese style writing, so alien and yet quite familiar. Around this same time, I discovered Blies Luxemburg's work on album covers and later discovered her project, London, a modern project. This is the first time I'd seen music and photography combined. The colours in her work that she gets from taking the images at night are soft and almost pastel-like, giving the image warmth despite the urban, mundane subject. This influenced me to go out at night and take some long exposures during my time in Tokyo. In the main image here, I love the happy accident of one light being on in a large building. Alongside this, I began to document the everyday things that I saw on the streets. Bags of rubbish, traffic cones, bikes, fire extinguishers, temporary barriers and vending machines. I was interested in how they were functionally the same, but then being slightly different from each other. Taking inspiration from Daido Moriyama's book, Shinjuku Plus, I produced a small book of all the imagery I'd taken during my time in Japan. In the book, I decided to group the images by colour, as I felt this was the most interesting and impactful way to show the images. Looking back on the work now, I think I prefer the more mundane, everyday imagery without the need to group them by colour. I feel this kind of imagery really has the allure I was looking for all those years ago. Standing on their own for what they are, the documentation of things I found interesting or different during my time in Japan. If you ever pass something that you think you might want to photograph and say to yourself, I'll go back later and get that, stop now and photograph it. Currently, I'm revisiting Todd Hiddo's work, who is another photographer I discovered through an album cover. His house hunting project is a particular favourite of mine. The images are very voyeuristic and feel quite disconnected, but the warmth in the colours really adds something to the shots. To me, this makes the houses look warm and cosy inside, almost like he's taking a portrait. When I go out, like most of us, I tend to have my phone with me. This is the way that I capture my current work. Shooting at all times of the day, quickly framing these surreal landscapes, and moving on. I then collect them on my phone for a time and look at them later. I like to collate the images together and then show them in groups of 3 on Instagram. It's only then when you see the types of images I collect. I tend to look for shape, form, and colour in an urban environment, documenting them before something changes and they are gone forever. There is so much to be experienced, even in average moments. Stephen Shaw has an idea of being present while you're walking around taking photos that he calls seeing with conscious attention. This idea of being in the moment is something that I think is important for all of us, not just photographers. Forgetting about things and focusing on the task in hand. Shaw was also part of the new topographic exhibition in 1975, and he was the only photographer to shoot in colour. He said that this was because, at the time, things started to change from black and white to colour, so why shouldn't his photography? Colour is something that I find important in my work. It can definitely add an extra dimension to the image. It can highlight absurdity or make something stand out more. The image in the middle here needs to have the red wall to draw your eye to the way that the shutters have been stacked against the wall, and to the cultural coding on the board and the box to the right of the shutters. Another photographer that speaks to me is Bert Dankart and his project Horizon. Using horizontal lines in his imagery, he examines the remnants of human activity and its detritus. The thing that really excites me about Dankart's work is not only the subject matter, but his framing, making the images almost abstract. Psychogeography, the exploration of urban environments that emphasize playfulness and drifting. The starting point for my future project is to explore urban locations in and around my neighbourhood of Nottingham, documenting these types of mundane, surreal landscapes. I'm drawn towards these types of landscapes because of their randomness and to the different elements that make them up. I also enjoy how these elements have been placed together haphazardly. I have this idea of showing where I am from to the world, showing that it might not be so different to some, but to a few it might even be exotic, existentially British, surreal, or just simply mundane and everyday. Questions for my future work. What time of day is best to shoot? How can I connect these landscapes to myself? Could this connection be a route I take?